To the fellow truth seekers, we're diving deep into the eerie and uncharted waters of the top 5 scary UFO cults the government can no longer ignore. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video because the last one on our list is genuinely bone-chilling. First off, Heaven's Gate. This infamous UFO cult believed that the Earth was about to be wiped clean, and the only way to survive was to leave it. In late March 1997, as Hale-Bopp reached its closest distance to Earth in a haunting act of collective departure from the material world, Applewhite and his 38 devout followers consumed a deadly cocktail of phenobarbital and vodka. Their intention was to shed their earthly bodies, board an alien spacecraft, and journey through Heaven's Gate to achieve a perceived superior form of existence. The group was established in 1974 by Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite, who were referred to as T and Doe within the movement. The pair first encountered each other in 1972 and embarked on a spiritual journey claiming to be the two witnesses mentioned in Revelation. By the mid-1970s, they had amassed several hundred followers. By 1976, the movement, comprising a core group of a few dozen members, adopted a monastic lifestyle and ceased recruitment. This is dark, but now I'm curious. Have you stumbled upon a story about a UFO cult that sent chills down your spine and left your palms sweating? Share your eeriest encounter in the comments. Heaven's Gate's theology is perceived as a fusion of Christian millenarianism, a New Age philosophy, and ufology, leading to its recognition as a UFO religion. The group held a firm belief that members could morph into immortal extraterrestrial beings by renouncing their human nature, and that they would ascend to a higher existence termed as the next level, or the evolutionary level above human. After Nettles succumbed to cancer in 1985, the group reinterpreted their belief in ascension. Initially, they thought they would ascend to heaven alive via a UFO, but later they began to view the body as merely a vessel for the soul and believed their consciousness would transition to next level bodies upon passing. On March 26, 1997, the San Diego County Sheriff's Department found the bodies of the 39 active members of the group, including Applewhite, in a house in the San Diego suburb of Rancho Santa Fe. Just prior to the mass departure, the group's website was updated with a message indicating that the comet marked the end of Heaven's Gate's journey on Earth and they were ready to leave with T's crew. However, the name Heaven's Gate was only used in the final years of the group's existence. Previously, they were known as Human Individual Metamorphosis and Total Overcomers Anonymous. Despite the horrific tragedy that occurred with the Heaven's Gate cult, it continues to intrigue and fascinate many people even years later. The beliefs and actions of this group offer a glimpse into the complexities of human behavior and our search for meaning and purpose in life. One of the most striking aspects of the Heaven's Gate cult is their unwavering faith in their leader, Marshall Applewhite. He was able to convince his followers that their wiping out from existence was the only way to reach a higher level of existence and achieve salvation. This blind faith serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of giving total control over one's life to another person. The constant bombardment of doomsday predictions and conspiracy theories in mainstream media has made people more susceptible to believing in extreme ideas. The fear of the unknown and the desire for answers often lead individuals to seek solace in these groups, providing them with a sense of belonging and purpose. However, the danger lies in the potential for manipulation and exploitation by leaders of those groups. The blind loyalty and willingness to believe can be used to control and manipulate followers for personal gain. This is why it's crucial to approach such groups with caution and critical thinking. Next on our list, the Aetherius Society. Founded in 1954 by George King, this group believes in advanced extraterrestrial intelligences operating on spiritual principles who govern the Earth. They consider themselves as cooperators with these cosmic beings to bring about positive change. The unique spiritual group, founded by a man who claimed to communicate with the extraterrestrial beings whom he called the Cosmic Masters. Followers of this faith believe that by aligning with these Cosmic Masters, they can help humanity overcome earthly challenges and ascend to a new age. Their belief system is a complex mix of theosophy, New Age notions, millenarian beliefs, and elements of UFO mythology. This society highly values selflessness, community service, respect for nature, spiritual healing, and fitness. Their gatherings resemble traditional church services. Although the Aetherius Society is generally non-controversial, some have questioned its esoteric and millenarian aspects. Despite its followers spanning the globe, the society remains quite small, with membership memberships mainly concentrated in the UK, Southern California, the US, and New Zealand. Their theology, deeply influenced by theosophy, fuses narratives of UFOs, yoga, and elements from different world religions, especially Hinduism, Buddhism, and Christianity. They reject religious exclusivity, maintaining that no one religion, nation, or race holds a monopoly on divine favor. The ultimate goal of this religion is to prevent global destruction by promoting harmony between humans and extraterrestrial masters, and by harnessing spiritual energy to raise the planet's spiritual level. They believe that prayer, often associated by spiritual energy batteries, often assisted by spiritual energy batteries designed to hold healing psychic energy, can prevent or mitigate various disasters. The Society's founder claimed to have telepathic conversations with Aetherius, placing him in the esteemed company of other Venus-sourced cosmic masters like Buddha and Jesus. Next up on our list is Christ Brotherhood. This group's intense devotion to otherworldly powers and alleged plans to summon extraterrestrial beings have made them a group of interest to the government. The unique UFO religion born out of Orange, California, it all started back in 1956 when a man named Wallace C. Halsey received otherworldly messages in his dreams. These prophetic warnings from alien beings detailed the looming end of the world, but with a silver lining. A chosen few of humanity would be saved. Halsey established Christ Brotherhood, Inc. as a non-profit religious educational organization, its mission enlightening mankind. Remarkably, it attracted members from a staggering 52 different religious denominations. In a compelling turn of events, Halsey led his followers to Cache Valley, Utah. In 1961, here they started building a unique compound replete with underground weapon shelters in the mountains near Smithfield City. Why this location, you ask? Well, Joseph Smith, the founding prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, had identified the Rocky Mountains as a sanctuary. But in 1963, the coherence of the Brotherhood was tested when Halsey mysteriously disappeared during a flight from Utah to Nevada. Despite exhaustive searches and even attempts to call upon extraterrestrial assistance, it took 13 years for a lost deer hunter to inadvertently discover the plane wreckage and the remains of Halsey and pilot Harry Cleveland Ross Jr. In memory of Halsey, his teachings to the Brotherhood were compiled into a volume published in 1965, Cosmic End Time Secrets. This book encapsulates the prophetic messages from alien life forms to Halsey, but this was not the end of the Christ Brotherhood. In fact, it continued to attract followers, with more than 100 members in 1979 and a peak of around 500 in the early 1980s. The teachings of the Christ Brotherhood continue to fascinate people even today, with many still searching for answers about their beliefs and practices. One notable aspect of the Brotherhood is their strong belief in the existence of extraterrestrial beings and their role in humanity's future. They also have a unique interpretation of the Bible, incorporating elements of ufology and ancient astronaut theories.
Okay, here's an out there idea. Rasputin's followers. Hear me out for a minute, would ya? Grigory Rasputin, the legendary Russian mystic and healer, developed a devoted following during his time in St. Petersburg, particularly into the early 20th century. While it might be a stretch to label it a cult in the traditional sense, he did attract a group of followers who revered him as a holy man with supernatural powers. His rise to prominence began when he arrived in St. Petersburg in the early 1900s, claiming to possess healing abilities and a direct connection to God. His charismatic personality and rumored ability to cure Alexei, the hemophiliac son of the Tsar Nicholas II and Empress Alexandra, gained him favor within the Russian imperial family, mostly Alexandria, but still, that was plenty for the time. His influence then extended beyond the royal court, as he attracted followers among the Russian nobility, clergy, and common people. A lot of folks believed that he possessed mystical powers, including the ability to predict the future and influence political decisions. Sounds like a cult taking over something to me. Some folks even credited him with supernatural abilities such as mind control and hypnotism. Once again, we're checking off all the boxes. Rasputin's followers formed a kind of informal cult around him, gathering at his home, seeking his guidance on matters of faith, healing, and personal advice. They saw him as a holy man, capable of performing miracles and offering spiritual enlightenment. Granted, his reputation wasn't without controversy. His unorthodox behavior, including his heavy drinking, promiscuity, and rumored involvement in dark and depraved activities, led to a lot of speculation and condemning from both the Russian Orthodox Church and a lot of Russian society. The man liked to have coitus, and he liked to have it with his followers. Now, despite the criticism and opposition he faced, his hold over the imperial family remained strong for quite some time, because Empress Alexandra relied on him for advice and support. Granted, his influence ultimately became a liability for the monarchy, contributing to growing resentment and discontent amongst the Russian people. So, what happened? Well, in December of 1916, a group of nobles, alarmed by his influence and concerned about the state of the monarchy, were like, let's assassinate him. How'd they do it? Well, they poisoned him, they fired at him, and they drowned him. I don't have enough time to go into detail, but rest assured, if it takes that much to kill somebody, they're not human like you or I. While his followers might not fit the traditional definition of a cult, their unwavering devotion to him and belief in his supernatural powers played a significant role in shaping his legacy as one of the most mysterious and controversial figures in Russian history. Also, his control over the monarchy. Come on. Look, I had to say Scientology today or else everybody would be asking me about it. This is a set of beliefs and practices invented by the American author L. Ron Hubbard, who developed a set of ideas that he called Dianetics. He presented it as a form of therapy. By 1954, he founded the Church of Scientology, and current estimates put the number of Scientologists, or followers, at just under 40,000 worldwide. That's a lot of folks. Scientology beliefs include reincarnation, and that traumatic events cause problematic engrams in the mind. But hey, it can be fixed. It's a process called auditing. But you gotta pay a fee each time. Eventually, somebody's gonna be like, okay, you're good. It takes about 7 years. Then you're given the status of clear. After you're deemed clear, then you can take part in further activities called operating Thetan levels, which, you guessed it, more money. The texts are kept secret from most followers and revealed only after you've given hundreds of thousands of dollars to the organization. If you don't have ridiculous amounts of money to burn, don't worry. Go on WikiLeaks. They're there. From soon after their formation, these groups have generated considerable opposition and controversy. And that's because, well, there's been some illegalness. So, by 1967, Hubbard was like, ooh, I'm gonna form a new elite group, the Sea Organization, or Sea Org. And I'm only gonna pick the most committed members of the church to join. By 1981, we get David Miscavige, who had been one of Hubbard's closest aides. He rose to prominence, so when Hubbard passed away, Miscavige was like, I'm in charge now. And he's still in charge to this day. Look, that's 1986 to 2024. You do the math, it's been a minute. If you want to talk about the illegal stuff, well, in the 1970s, all of these followers engaged in a program of criminal infiltration of the US government, resulting in several executives of the organization being convicted and imprisoned for multiple offenses by a US federal court. Well, going back to the former leader, Hubbard, he was convicted in absentia of fraud by a French court in 1978 and sentenced to 4 years in prison. In 1992, a court in Canada convicted the Scientology organization in Toronto of spying on law enforcement and government agencies, and also criminal breach of trust. The Church of Scientology was convicted of fraud by a French court in 2009, a judgment which was upheld by the Supreme Court of Cessation in 2013. The Church of Scientology has been described by government inquiries, international parliamentary bodies, scholars, law lords, and numerous superior court judgments as both a dangerous cult and a manipulative profit-making business. I could talk about them for hours. We could be here all day. And just how awful they are. So let me know in the comments if you'd want that. How about we end today with a doozy that I think still controls a lot of people, but they don't know it, NXIVM. Founder Keith Rainier originally promoted this as a self-help organization. There was workshops, there was classes on empowerment. Heck yes, it had 18,000 followers at its peak. I think that was around 2017 when members came forward to expose the really bad practices of a secret society within the group. Women were recruited under the false pretense that they were joining a sisterhood, but it ended up being a coitus cult. There was a pyramid scheme. So Keith, who members would call Vanguard, he was at the top, followed by masters who recruited other women to join the secretive group. And at the bottom were the newest recruits, who were referred to as, well, the lowest of the low. A former member explained that in order to be admitted to the secret club, you gotta hand over some dirt, some nudie photos and other compromising documents that people could use to blackmail you with if you ever tell anybody about it. She was also told that another part of the initiation was getting a small tattoo. But when the day arrived, well, she got branded instead. No little tattoo, a brand. Where was it? Right above the pelvic area. Each woman was instructed to say, and I quote, "Master, please brand me, it would be an honor." Icky. So fast forward to 2020, Keith was tried in court when more than a dozen women came forward with statements regarding his psychological and other icky misdoings. He was convicted of many crimes, racketeering, bad videos. I could go on. He was sentenced to life in prison, but in a court filing, his lawyers wrote, yeah, he's not sorry for his choices. Look, if you're handing over that much blackmail, I'm pretty sure this cult still exists to this day, but people just don't want to come forward. I don't blame them, but Ever heard of Bohemian Grove? A secretive organization of people that control the world? Well, what do you know? It exists, and many of its members are powerful world leaders and titans of industry. It appears to primarily exist as a place where the rich and powerful go to misbehave. That is, according to the Washington Post. Technically speaking, Bohemian Grove is a restricted 2,700-acre campground at 2601 Bohemian Avenue in Monte Rio, California, in the States, belonging to a private San Francisco-based gentlemen's club known as the Bohemian Club. In mid-July of every year, they host a more than 2-week encampment of some of the most prominent men in the world. Their all-male membership includes artists and musicians, as well as many prominent business leaders, government officials, former US presidents, senior media executives, people of power. You'll notice that I'm not saying any specific names right now, and that's because I don't feel like getting sued or disappearing. Thanks. Members can invite guests for either the Spring Jinx in June or the main July encampments, or they can schedule private day use events when things aren't being used for club-wide purposes, and that's when you're allowed to bring spouses, family, and friends. But if you're a gal or you're underage, gotta get out of there by 9 or 10 o'clock at night, because that's when things get fun, apparently. After 40 years of membership, that's when a guy earns the old guard status. Gives you reserved seating at the daily talks and other perks. Okay, I think there's a couple of names I can talk about without getting in trouble. Pray for me. Former US President Herbert Hoover was inducted into the Old Guard on March 4th of 1953, and the club motto is "Weaving spiders come not here," which implies that outside concerns and business deals are left outside. But a lot of business deals actually occur here. Important political and business deals have been developed, notably a Manhattan Project planning meeting that took there in September of 1942, subsequently leading to the atomic explosive device. Those attending this meeting? Ernest Lawrence, J. Robert Oppenheimer, the S1 executive committee heads, presidents of Harvard, Yale, Princeton, along with representatives of Standard Oil and General Electric and military officials. At the time, Oppenheimer was not an S1 member, but he hosted the meeting. Grove members take particular pride in this event, and they tell the story pretty often, so I think I was safe to talk about that. Other behavior at the campground has led to numerous claims, with President Richard Nixon's comments from May 13th of 71 calling it the most, insert F-word slur for gay here, goddamn thing you could ever imagine. I swear finding a way to say curse words without getting dinged by YouTube rules is like writing a crossword puzzle. To be a fly on the wall of any of those meetings. Sounds like a cult to me. Okay. Here's a cult I know you've seen posters for. Shen Yun. Technically, it's a show put on by a religious group that is arguably a cult called the Falun Gong. This was founded by a man named Li Hongzhi, who registered the group with the Chinese government in '92. Fun fact, in 1989, after the bad protests, the Chinese Communist Party established a registry of social organizations to try and solve things. Li has been open about his beliefs that evolution is fraudulent, that people of different races will be separated in heaven, and that homosexuality and promiscuity are unnatural. Great, I'm in trouble. He's mentioned that he believes that aliens were attempting to control humans by making us dependent on modern science. Okay. A San Francisco man named Samuel Luo has claimed his mother and stepfather refused essential medical treatment because of the teachings, saying that sickness is based in karma. Also, apparently it's God's plan to eliminate the gay population. Well, I'm still here. So, Shen Yun was kicked out of China and have some heavy anti-communist sentiments, to say the least. Essentially, they're a church that is putting all of their money into a dance show with very heavy anti-communism and anti-China sentiments. They don't hide that they're heavily critical of the government of China. In between depictions of ancient dances or stories told through dance and singing, there are skits depicting, get this, organ harvesting, kidnapping, and suppression of religious liberty by plainclothes secret police. That's a heck of a show. A memo from the Embassy of the People's Republic of China has quite the opinion on the performances. Allow me to quote, "This organization preaches heretical fallacies that are anti-humanity and anti-science, and exercises extreme mental manipulation on followers. It is a cult that seriously harms the society and violates human rights, and is a cancer in the body of the modern and civilized society." According to one attendee over the last couple of years, at one point during the show, an amazing singer came on stage for a solo performance, and then the lyrics of the songs were translated and written on a screen, and they included things like, oh boy, atheism and evolution are deadly ideas, and modern trends destroy what makes us human. That wasn't just something that was said once, it was a recurring theme. This group also concludes the show with a tidal wave crashing into mainland China as a result of their anti-religious ways, in typical end of days fashion. This company has 8 total groups that tour for 6 months each year, performing in over 130 cities in North America, Europe, Asia, Australia, and Latin America. Ergo, trying to control the world through their views. In third place, we have the People's Temple. In the 1950s, Indiana resident Jim Jones founded a church that he claimed promoted promoted socialism and equality with the religious elements of Christianity. So initially, he was a little more than, just like a charismatic hustler who faked faith healings by having audience plants pull chicken livers out of congregants' mouths. But as the years progressed, he demanded more and more of his followers. In the early 1970s, Jones moved his group to California and set them up in a commune-like settlement in the Redwood Valley. After he established several locations throughout the state, including its headquarters in San Francisco, the temple forged ties with many left-wing political figures and claimed to have 20,000 members, even though apparently 3,000 to 5,000 is a little more likely. Jones eventually came to believe that the nuclear war was imminent and moved his followers again to the South American country of Guyana, which he thought would be, outside the potential danger zone. The group lived there for several years as the People's Temple Agricultural Project, but after former members started speaking out against the church, San Francisco Congressman Leo Ryan decided to travel to Jonestown to investigate claims of, not so good things. During his visit, a number of temple members expressed a desire to leave with him and accompanied Leo to the local airstrip at Port Kitsuma. There they were intercepted by self-styled temple security guards who opened fire on the group, killing the congressman, 3 journalists, one of the defectors, as well as injuring 9 others, including Ryan's aide, Jackie Spear. A few seconds of the incident were captured on video by NBC cameraman Bob Brown, one of the journalists who had their lives ended in the attack. That evening in Jonestown, Jones ordered his congregation to drink a concoction of cyanide-laced, grape-flavored Flavor Aid. Right. This is where the phrase drinking the Kool-Aid originates. All in all, 918 people died. This includes 4 that died at the temple headquarters that night in the Guyanese capital of Georgetown. Some members resisted ending their lives and were injected with fatal doses of cyanide, as were those too young to drink the drink, and some others survived by fleeing through the jungle. Until 9/11, it was the largest loss of American civilian life in history, which sends a chill down my spine to just think about. Just a teensy little side note, by the way. Surviving temple members of the mass death in the US announced their fears of being targeted by a hit squad composed of Jonestown survivors. Similarly, in 1979, the Associated Press reported a US congressional aide's claim that there were 120 white brainwashed assassins out from Jonestown awaiting the trigger word to pick up their hit. Temple insider Michael Prokes, who had been ordered to deliver a suitcase which contained temple funds, which were supposed to be transferred to the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, killed himself in March of 1979, 4 months after the Jonestown incident. In the days leading up to his death, Michael sent notes to several people, together with a 30-page statement he had written about the temple. He had arranged for a press conference in a Modesto, California motel room, during which he read a statement to the 8 reporters who attended, before, excusing himself, entering a restroom, and ending his life. The levels of brainwashing displayed here are just too deep to unpack. In second place, we have the family. Oh sure, because that totally sounds wholesome. Known as one of Australia's most notorious cults, yep, not an American one for once, the family began with Anne Hamilton Byrne, who was a yoga teacher who believed herself to be a reincarnation of Jesus Christ. Oh, right, and unlike all the other listings today, this one was founded, by a woman. She teamed up with parapsychologist Raynor Johnson in the mid-1960s to form what was initially known as the Great White Brotherhood. Correct, I swear I'm not talking about the Triple K group or the Yahtzees, I promise. Over the course of several years, Anne adopted 28 offspring by receiving the young as gifts from members, as well as by falsifying papers to convince others to give their spawn up for adoption, all in the hope of creating a master race that would survive the apocalypse she believed to be imminent. While other adults in the group were known as either aunties or uncles, Anne claimed to be the biological mother of all 28 adoptees. She also told the offspring she was, Jesus Christ, and when they didn't live up to her exact standards, they were punished forcibly, starved, or, dosed with LSD, because, a crazy brain trip is exactly how to make little ones behave. The cult went undetected for years because the adoptees were forced to hide whenever visitors arrived. But in 1987, the group's headquarters was finally raided and all the younglings were removed from the premises. Anne was only ever charged with falsifying birth certificates, and in 2019 she died from dementia at about 98 years old, having never faced consequences for her actions. Part of me, my brain feels like it's about to explode. They had 32 years to nail her, and all she got was falsifying birth certificates? I feel like giving underage folks LSD should have been, the priority of offense charging. In first place, we have Aum Shinrikyo. Founded by Shoko Asahara in 1984, Aum Shinrikyo is a Japanese new religious movement and doomsday cult who first made headlines in the late 80s amid accusations that Asahara was forcing members to donate money to the group and holding them against their will. Oh, pardon me, I'll backtrack for a moment. Although Aum was, from the beginning considered controversial in Japan, it was not initially associated with serious crimes. Aum's public relations activities included publishing comics and animated cartoons that attempted attempted to tie its religious ideas to popular anime and manga themes, including space missions, powerful weapons, world conspiracies, and the quest for ultimate truth. Like many cult leaders, Asahara believed in an imminent doomsday, this time caused by a world war started by the United States. And of course, according to him, only his followers would survive. I feel like a broken record, but don't worry. This wouldn't be in first place if it wasn't worse than, drinking the Kool-Aid, giving underagers LSD, and branding. Okay, well, worse in my opinion. I'll admit, my brain's a little warped these days for a morality scale. In 1991, Aum began using wiretapping to get NTT uniforms and equipment and created a manual for wiretapping. In July of 1993, cult members sprayed large amounts of liquid containing Bacillus anthracis spores from a cooling tower on the roof of Aum Shinrikyo's Tokyo headquarters. However, their plan to cause an anthrax epidemic failed. The attack resulted in a large number of complaints about, bad odors, but no infections. At the end of 1993, the cult started secretly manufacturing the nerve agent sarin, and later VX. So Aum tested its sarin on sheep at Banjawarn Station, a remote pastoral property in Western Australia, killing 29 sheep. Both sarin and VX were then used in several assassinations and attempts over 1994 to 1995. In 1995, the group executed a sarin gas attack in the Tokyo subway, which caused the deaths of 12 people and injured 50 more. The group says that those who carried out the attacks did so secretly, without being known to other executives and ordinary believers. After that attack, Japanese authorities learned that the group had also been responsible for the death of lawyer Tsutsumi Sakamoto, who was working on a class action lawsuit against Aum Shinrikyo at the time of his death. Almost forgot. The group also killed his wife and descendant. On the 6th of July 2018, after exhausting all appeals, Asahara and 6 followers on death row were executed as punishment for the 1995 attacks and other crimes. So I'm glad that, unlike the last leader I discussed, some justice was actually served in this situation. 6 additional followers were executed on the 26th of the same month. At 12:10 a.m. on New Year's Day of 2019, at least 9 people were injured when a car was deliberately driven into crowds celebrating the New Year on Takashita Street in Tokyo. Local police reported the arrest of Kazuhiro Kusakabe, the suspected driver, who allegedly admitted to intentionally ramming his vehicle into crowds to protest his opposition to the death penalty, specifically in retaliation for, the execution of the aforementioned Aum cult members.
Number 5. The Brethren. Do you feel like the modern world has got you down, got you running around feeling overwhelmed? Perhaps you need a break from it all and you want to get away. I want to go back to a simpler time. Well then perhaps the Brethren is the movement you've been looking for. Founded by Jim T. Roberts, the movement seeks to shed all of the convenience and accommodations of modern living, with its members instead choosing to live as vagrants, drifting on the edge of society, away from the prying eye of the modern world. Their leader believes that in order to be guaranteed a spot in heaven, one must purify themselves. And to the Brethren, this means purifying themselves of just about every facet of modern living. As part of their renouncement of all modern living, Brethren must forsake all of their family, friends, their jobs, their livelihoods, all in favor of their new brothers. You aren't allowed to partake in any material goods of any kind. Sew your own clothing and eat what you can scavenge. This particularly grisly habit is what gave the cult its enduring nickname of garbage eaters for their tendency to dumpster dive. You're not even allowed to laugh, celebrate, or play, as all celebrations must be saved for the return of the Savior at the end of the world. Although given those conditions, I'm not sure what you'd have to laugh about. It goes as far too as members being barred from receiving treatment or medicine, even for common curable illnesses. Because members are forced to cut themselves off from their families, oftentimes members disappear without their family members ever even getting to know what happened. As such, groups have sprung up to try and reconnect Brethren to their families and hopefully get them a dinner that didn't come out of a dumpster. Why not toss a subscribe our way and join our group here? Our teachings are scary videos every day, and the only thing you have to give us is a subscribe, and if you're feeling really generous, maybe a like too. Let's keep going.
Number 3 on this list is the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You guys might be familiar with this one right now, as it's currently very popular. Netflix just released a documentary about this cult, so if you want a more in-depth summary of what went down, definitely go check that out. Ranker says that this cult was an offshoot of Mormonism that's constantly in the news for unsavory reasons. FLDS openly embraces polygamy, which the mainstream LDS outlawed a century ago. The group has anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 members in rural Utah and Arizona, with the group having almost total control of 2 small, linked border towns in 2 states. While Mormon splinter groups had been around long before, the FLDS was incorporated in 1991 by a a group of men who had been excommunicated by the church. They went through a range of leaders who all declared themselves prophets until being taken over by Raélian Jeffs in 2002. He passed shortly thereafter and his son Warren took over. It was under Warren Jeffs that the FLDS practices of child marriage, bigamy, incest, racism, abandonment of teenage boys all became public knowledge. Jeffs was sent to prison in 2007 but continues to be the de facto head of the church while his successors squabble for power. This cult certainly isn't as powerful as it once was, and you have to imagine that as time goes on and more people are educated on what this cult did in the past, that will continue on a downward trajectory. But for now, they still aren't totally finished, and if you wanted to, then you could join this group. Absolutely do not do that though, because these people get up to some very weird and often illegal things. Like the leader was literally sent to jail and is still there rotting away. I would not want to get myself into a situation where I'm anywhere close to the people that support that guy. Number 2 on this list is the Nuwaubian Nation. This one is absolutely nuts, guys, so strap in. Ranker says, formerly known as the United Nuwaubian Nation of Moors, this is a cult of personality based around founder Dwight York, combining Christianity, ancient Egyptian iconography, African rituals, and a belief that aliens are coming. The nation believes that 144,000 chosen people will be taken away in a flying city, spirited to Orion to prepare for the final fight against Satan. Shockingly, York's mishmash of New Age concepts, black power militancy, and ancient Egyptian religion caught on in both the hip-hop community and in rural Georgia, where York built a massive compound made with donated funds. York's mythology grew, incorporating cloning, racial theory, cosmology, anti-government conspiracies, and linguistics. Even as the cult grew, York was under investigation, and he was finally detained in 2002 for running a massive human trafficking ring comprising as many as 1,000 individuals. He was sent to prison for life and his compound was seized and demolished. The group still exists, though in much smaller numbers. If we just ignore all of the human rights violations for a second, which we shouldn't by the way, but let's just do it anyways for one moment, then at the best possible case scenario, you join this cult and then dedicate your life preparing for a battle with Satan that you may not ever have, because not only is that crazy, but you might not even be in the 140,000 people who gets picked to have said battle with Satan. Like, this just doesn't make any sense at all, guys. Then we add back on all of those human rights violations and all the other stuff that York was sent to jail for, and you get one sick and twisted cocktail that is this cult. Number 1 on this list is Church Universal and Triumphant. Yet another cult of personality in New Age clothes, the CUT was founded in 1975 as an offshoot of a different movement, Summit Lighthouse. Founder Elizabeth Clare Prophet pitched herself and her husband as messengers of the Ascended Masters, a set of spiritually awakened ancient beings central to the Theosophy belief system. They also threw in elements of Christian Science, the I Am movement, and Mormon-style doomsday prepping. The prophets grew wealthy enough to buy large spreads in the Santa Monica Mountains and Montana, while members drove themselves into debt building fallout shelters and paying huge sums of money to reserve a spot in the post-nuclear conflict society. The church was also accused of making illicit straw purchases and of using sleep deprivation against members who attempted to leave. In ill health, the prophet retired in 1999 and passed 10 years later. Since then, the church has gone through legal problems and succession squabbles, but members still meet on a regular basis. So yeah, just join this cult if you want to potentially get tortured from sleep deprivation. Oh, and while we're torturing you, we're also gonna take all your money and invest it into some underground bunker that you'll probably never use. If that doesn't sound like an excellent use of time and money to you, which it probably shouldn't, then I really wouldn't recommend joining this cult.
In 5th place, we have NXIVM. I thought I'd kick off today with the most recent cult on our list. NXIVM was started in 1998, making it younger than I am. Founder Keith Rainier originally promoted NXIVM as a self-help organization with workshops and classes on empowerment. NXIVM amassed more than 18,000 followers across North America until 2017, when members came forward to expose the not-so-good practices of a secret society within the group. Women were recruited under the false pretense that they were joining a sisterhood of sorts, but it ended up being a sex cult. So a pyramid scheme existed within the group, with Keith, who members called Van vanguard at the top, followed by masters, who recruited other women to the secretive group, and at the bottom were the newest recruits, who were referred to as slaves. A former member explained that in order to be admitted to the secret club, she had to give her master naked photos and other compromising documents that would be used as blackmail if she ever told anyone about the group's existence. She was also told that another part of the initiation process was getting a small tattoo, but when the day of the marking arrived, instead of a tattoo, the new members were told to undress, and their master branded them with a design that included Keith's initials right above their pelvic area. Each woman was instructed to say, and I quote, "Master, please brand me, it would be an honor." Ugh, icky. Just so icky. In 2020, Keith was tried in court, where more than a dozen women came forward with statements regarding his psychological and sexual misdoings. He was convicted of many crimes, including sex vroom vroom, racketeering, and underage bad videos. Keith was sentenced to life in prison, but in a court filing, his lawyers wrote that he is not sorry for his conduct or his choices. Well, that just kind of knocks the wind out of me. Anyone else? In fourth place, we have the Children of God. Initially called Teens for Christ, Children of God, or COG, was founded in 1968 by rogue preacher David Berg in Huntington Beach, California. Attracting young runaways and hippies, David preached a kind of worship that combined the ways of Jesus Christ with the free love movement of the 1960s. Group living, zealous converting, and isolated communes were all pillars of the Children of God Church. Members, who got to be around 15,000 people across the world at its peak, didn't work or go to school. The COG didn't believe in the nuclear family, so younglings were grouped together and lived separately from their parents. In the late 1970s, COG became notorious for the sexual practices that one of the founders' own daughters later described as religious sexual coercion. David coined the term flirty fishing, which was a sexual practice in which women would allegedly have sex with men to bring them into the cult. If that wasn't scummy enough, he also promoted and encouraged the sexualization of younglings within the COG community. As David manipulated the COG family with his sadistic practices, members started leaving the community, including the families of actors Joaquin Phoenix and Rose McGowan, who both grew up in the communes. Former COG members began coming forward in the early 1990s, describing an environment that permitted and encouraged the physical and sexual taking advantage of younglings. Ricky DuPuy appeared on a talk show in 1993 and revealed that he'd been ordered by the group to forcibly fornicate with someone barely in the double digits of age. Ricky later took his own life, sadly like many other members of the group, including the founder's son, Ricky Rodriguez, who was sexually taken advantage of throughout his life by his father and the group. Although David died in 1994 while under FBI investigation, the cult continues to exist and now goes by the name Family International, although the group claims that the horrific practices are a thing of the past. Sure. Okay. I trust that as much as I trust the construction in Toronto to meet a deadline. No.
Number 3. Raélism. Raélism is the teaching that humanity was birthed by a hyper-advanced race of aliens called the Elohim, who genetically engineered us as their children. Our most famous religious leaders over the years were Elohim human hybrids, whose wondrous abilities and powers were mislabeled as prophets. It's said that by 2035, if Raélism's followers have achieved the tenets correctly and fulfilled the movement's teaching by spreading its message and building an embassy to welcome its 39 prophets. The group rose to prominence in the 1970s when its leader, Claude Vorilhon, who called himself Rayo, claims he had an experience with a UFO where a spacecraft flying overhead was full of beings who told him about humanity's future and past and handed him a Bible and told him it was his mission to build that embassy. Now all of this sounds like pretty standard cult stuff, worshipping aliens who are secret progenitors, but where things get pretty interesting and worthy of note is that around 2002, a company called Clonaid, with direct ties to Raélism, claimed to have done the impossible and cloned a baby girl, appropriately named Eve. Immediately, it spurned all kind of controversy, led to several investigations, discussions about the ethics and morality of the situation. But despite all this, no actual evidence of the clone baby ever came up. Eve isn't the only alleged baby birthed this way through Clonaid, with several claims of Clonaid brand clones being produced since the original story in 2002, all with dubious claims, including controversial rapper Kid Buu, who claims to have been born there. So either Eve is still hiding somewhere, or maybe it was a bit of an exaggeration. Regardless, Clonaid charges up to $200,000 for their services, which might seem a bit expensive, but hey, you're getting a great deal on a clone. You're gonna make your money back on that. So if anyone's got a piggy bank just weighing them down, please send me a message and then get back to me and introduce me to you and your clone. Number 2, the Church of Bible Understanding. Hey, real quick for me, what's your favorite Seinfeld episode? Yeah, I probably could have guessed it was the comeback or the contest, and those are both great answers. But what about the checks, where George gets involved with that group of carpet cleaners who end up trying to recruit for a cult, and he's all mad they want his boss, but they don't want him? That's the kind of shenanigan that could only happen to Costanza. Turns out that episode was based on a real group called the Church of Bible Understanding, although at the time they were going by Christian Brothers Carpet Cleaners, no doubt where the idea came from. This undertaking was one of the group's many noble business ventures, including a used van business and a New York chain of used antique stores. Like most cults, the group was led by a charismatic figurehead, one Stuart Trail, who maintained to his followers that only he was capable of understanding the Word of God and understanding how to annoy George Costanza. Their leader was expelled from the Pentecostal church he worshipped at in the early 70s, and after his expulsion, refused to give up the dream and formed his own church, promising a communal lifestyle of salvation, and if reports from former members are to be believed, hard work for below minimum wage. Members were isolated from their friends, families, and communities and encouraged to devote themselves wholly to the church. Besides a less than flattering appearance on Seinfeld, the group most recently made headlines after an orphanage they built in Haiti had burned to the ground, after several claims that orphanages the group had been producing in Haiti had been extremely substandard, shoddy, overcrowded, and dirty. The leader, Stuart Trail, passed away in 2018. Current estimates suggested the group has dwindled down from thousands of members in its heyday to just dozens now. And there's no word if Larry David was ever a member or associated.
Number 5 on this list is Happy Science. Kind of a fun name that they have there for sure, but maybe not the funnest of cults. Ranker says if you're looking for a mashup of world religions, New Age, hokum, far-right nationalism, and infrastructure spending, then Japanese cult Happy Science is for you. It was founded in 1986 by Ryoho Okawa, a former salaryman who was enraptured by a group called the Godlight Association. He soon formed his own cult of personality called Science of Happiness and changed its name to Happy Science a few years later. Okawa believes he is the human incarnation of a supreme being called El Kanter, who combines Christ, Buddha, Muhammad, and every other prophetic deity to create a 9-dimensional heaven with him at the head. He's also created a massively complex mythology of New Age nonsense while simultaneously founding a political wing called the Happiness Realization Party. Here's where the strangeness goes into overdrive though, as his party advocates a vicious Japanese nationalism devoted to denying historical cruelties, advocating conflict with China and North Korea, and rebuilding Japan's infrastructure. The group claims to have 12 million members around the world, has a multimedia arm, and enjoys tax-exempt status in the US. So basically, if it was up to this group, Japan would be invading China and North Korea and probably well on its way to starting World War III. So yeah, definitely not one that you want to be a part of because that could obviously get very bad very quickly. Not to mention you need to worship this dude who believes that he's the human incarnation of all these cool people. I mean, if he actually is the human reincarnation of all of those people, then that's freaking awesome, but come on guys, I think the likelihood that this dude is Jesus as well as Buddha is pretty low.
Next up we have Providence, which is officially known as Christian Gospel Mission, CGM, Jesus Morning Star, or JMS. Geez, a lot of these things have a lot of names. It's a Christian new religious movement founded by Jung Myung-suk in 1980 and headquartered in Wolmyongdong, South Korea. I swear I looked up how to pronounce it, folks. It's been widely referenced by international media as a cult, and you're about to find out why. So in the 1970s, this leader was a member of the Unification Church, or UC, which he based his teaching on. When he founded his own group in the 80s, it criticized Christian teachings and beliefs and maintained that their leader was the second coming of Jesus Christ, and was later expelled from the Methodists. The name was changed to the International Christian Association in the mid-1980s, and a rift occurred in the group in 1986 when the vice president of Providence attempted to act on the scandal surrounding the group, but he was shut out of the organizational system, and Jung consolidated all the power around himself. In October of 1999 was when the organization officially became Christian Gospel Mission. So what were the lessons of this cult? Alrighty everybody, buckle in. One lesson implies that those who do not meet the leader will not go to heaven. Another is that anybody who's going to betray the leader, you're committing a grave crime. During the instruction of the advanced level of the 30 lessons, it is taught that your leader is the Messiah, proven through the numerological interpretation of prophecy dates and times in the book of Daniel. Providence preaches the advent of the complete Testament era and allegorizes the relationship between God and man to that between the groom and bride, or two lovers. It also teaches that the original sin was caused by Eve's intercourse with the fallen angel, who turned into Satan. And Providence teaches that this can be redeemed by having intercourse with your leader. Oh yeah, forgot that little thing. The leader of all this was found to have forced female followers to have coitus with them as a religious behavior meant to save their souls in the Korean court of law. Former members have stated or testified that young and attractive women were presented to their leader as gifts, with whom he coercively engaged in icky acts, which was explained to them as a purification rite. So in April of 2009, our crazy leader was convicted of harming someone in the R-word way by the Supreme Court of Korea and sentenced to only 10 years of imprisonment. He was released in February of 2018, and following his release from prison, the Korea Post reported that the Providence faith movement had reached more than 70 countries. Before I get sick, we're moving on to the Nation of Yahweh. In 1978, Hulan Mitchell Jr. left the Nation of Islam because it just wasn't extreme enough for him. He rechristened himself Yahweh ben Yahweh and founded the Nation of Yahweh. Try saying that 5 times fast. The group is classified as another black supremacist cult by the Southern Poverty Law Center and as an official cult by the Miami Herald. Swell. The SPLC has criticized the beliefs of the Nation of Yahweh as racist, stating that the group believes that black people are the true race and that whites hold wicked powers. They've apparently calmed down a bit in recent years, but the belief still seems to hold. The SPLC also claims that the group believes that Yahweh ben Yahweh had a mission to vanquish whites and that it held views similar to those of the Christian Identity Movement, which believes that Aryans are the true bad guys and non-whites are devils. It got to the point where Yahweh proved so popular that he got his own day in Miami, but then he started commanding his followers to kill for him, went to prison for conspiracy to commit killings, and died shortly after his release. He still has a handful of followers in Miami though, although their activity seems to be mostly limited to like, Yahweh's the best, and posting memes about bad things and homophobic scourges on their Facebook page. The group is reportedly spread throughout the US and no longer concentrated in one location. More recently, the group appeared in the news back in 2012 after Michael the Black Man, real name Maurice Woodside, a member of the group who is now a conservative activist, was invited to speak at a rally for Rick Santorum's presidential campaign, during which he said that Democrats were similar to Yazis. Woodside has since become a vocal supporter of Donald Trump, but continues to defend Yahweh ben Yahweh and the nation's beliefs. So Aetherius was the self-proclaimed Moses to his faithful flock, the anthill. If you think I forgot a word there, it was intentional, so I don't get in trouble. This cult's journey began with a twisted prophecy woven from a belief in the apocalypse. As a youngster, Aetherius dropped out of school and started teaching himself the Old Testament. He was convinced that a war between good and evil was about to come. And, well, what's it gonna do? Bring about the end of the world. How'd you know? Thus, he converted to the Seventh-day Adventist Church and lived by their rules. No tobacco, no unhealthy foods, no booze, no substances, nada, no vices. Aetherius was a charismatic man. He was good at persuading others to do his bidding. Now, while organizing seminars for the Adventists, he convinced an entire group of people to quit their jobs and form his religious following. Now, he formed this commune in 1977, and it initially promised sin-free utopia and unity. Sounds perfect. He was no longer hush to the world. He was Moses. So, how do we sustain this idyllic life? The sale of baked goods. But behind the bustling bakeries, Aetherius' grip tightened with increasingly cruel and bizarre rules. Members were forbidden from speaking without his presence and cut off from their families entirely. Also, Buddy developed a drinking problem, which went against all of his previous beliefs. He also started spying on his followers, and if you didn't seem devoted enough, he's gonna punish you. If you want to leave, well, he's going to be enraged. And the horror didn't stop with the psychological harm. He would often discipline his followers by becoming a self-proclaimed surgeon, using crude tools like kitchen utensils, pliers, and blowtorches to mutilate his followers. And blowtorches to harm his followers. Limbs, teeth, fingers, and toes were all sacrificed. He'd ordered the faithful to break their own legs, fire at each other, and endure inhuman practices like eating what they put out. Insects and rats. Even his own offspring weren't spared. One passed away during a botched circumcision, and the other was left to perish in a blizzard. As the well-being of his seminars decreased, Well, Theriot became more and more convinced of his godly delusions. It became apparent to him that the world would end in 1979, and he drove his commune into the Canadian wilderness, convinced that, for some reason, God would skip a chance to destroy Quebec. So 1979 came and went, but the world didn't really end. Now, Moses explained this away by saying our world and God's world run on different time zones. However, this crazy explanation actually didn't stop his followers from romanticizing him and proclaiming him as their absolute leader. Now, in the Canadian wilderness and later the woods of Ontario, his female concubines bore him 26 new followers. Now, Moses, as the ultimate effed up cult leader, would harm his descendants and welfare authorities would come and take them away. It took a near-death escape by Gabrielle Lavallée to expose the horrors of the anthill. Gabrielle endured unimaginable acts. We're talking hypodermic syringes in her spine, torches to her no region, and amputations. Now, in 1989, the cult's torment finally ended, with Theriot imprisoned for life. And in 2011, another inmate took his life. So a figure emerged in the 1970s that would captivate the hearts and minds of thousands. Chandra Mohan Yen, known to his followers as Osho, embarked on a journey that would create the Rajneesh Movement. Now, this movement was controversial at the time, due to the founders' hostility, first to Hindu morality in India, and later to Christian morality in the US. In the Soviet Union, the movement was banned as being contrary to positive aspects of Indian culture and to the aims of the protest movement in Western countries. Now, the positive aspects were allegedly being subverted by the leader, whom the Soviet government considered a reactionary ideologue of the monopolistic bourgeoisie of India and a promoter of consumerism in a traditional Hindu guise. Osho's quest began in India, where his teachings carried a unique brand of controversy. He criticized Gandhi and really opposed state-sanctioned marriage. For him, love was meant to be free, unburdened by the chains of traditional wedlock. As he gained followers, he only got more power. His followers wore specific robes and adopted new names. So our leader, Osho, originally became Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, the leader of this crazy movement. And his original teachings eventually twisted into greed and killing. Now, the movement thrived, accumulating wealth through a myriad of business enterprises. Osho's obsession with the Rolls Royce began to reflect a new message, that wealth and spirituality could coexist. But then, as things do, they took a turn for the worse. At the peak of these tensions, a circle of leading members of the Oregon Commune was arrested for crimes including an attempted assassination plot to kill U.S. Attorney Charles H. Turner, and the United States' first ever recorded bioharm attack calculated to influence the outcome of a local election in their favor. Granted, these efforts ultimately failed. In this bio-attack, Salmonella bacteria was deployed to infect salad products in local restaurants and shops, which poisoned several hundred people. Osho was deported from the US in 1985 as part of his Alford plea deal, following the convictions of his staff and right-hand man, who were found guilty of the attack. After his deportation, 21 countries denied him entry, and the movement's headquarters eventually returned to India, and the Oregon Commune was destroyed in September of 1985. Now, Osho's legacy lives on, which
On to the next, the Raélian Movement. Often termed as the most significant UFO cult, boasts a global following of around 80,000 enthusiasts, a tale that spins around the message, a belief that all life forms, all races and species, are the brainchild of the extraterrestrial assistants named the Elohim. These entities, they claim, used DNA to breathe life into the previously barren Earth. They advocate for world peace, sharing democracy, and nonviolence. Particularly in focus today is the French sector of the movement, Mouvement Raélien Français, or the MRF, which has faced its fair share of backlash and criticism. In fact, within France, it's frequently labeled as a harmful cult. But here's where the story gets interesting. Despite the criticism and the anti-cult sentiment, the movement has managed to survive and even thrive since its inception in the early 70s. Their leader, the self-proclaimed Messiah Raël, was ousted from France in 2002 and hasn't returned since. The tale of Raël's exile, the French Raélians' resilience in the face of anti-cult biases, and the recent strategy to dissolve their formal organization for a more clandestine operation provide a captivating peek into the influence of the anti-cult movement on targeted groups within France. It's evident that the Raélian movement has faced its fair share of challenges, but their unwavering belief in the message and their desire to spread it globally is a testament to their resilience. Whether you believe in extraterrestrial origins or not, you can't deny the influence this movement has on popular culture and the ongoing conversation about the existence of aliens. in life.
How about we start off today with a UFO cult, known as the Superior Universal Alignment. Also known as, wait for it, Lineamiento Universal Superior, it was founded by Valentina de Andrade in 1981. She claimed to have received messages from extraterrestrials warning her of destruction. If, however, she shared their warnings with others, she and her followers would be saved. Similar to the Raélians, SUA believes that Jesus was actually an extraterrestrial messenger. They also believe that males born after 1981 are evil and that their lives should end as payment to the superior beings. In 1989, the Amazonian town of Altamira received a sudden increase in reports of missing boys. Not having clear clues about the disappearances, the authorities couldn't do anything about it. By 1993, the reports rose to 19 missing young folks with no trace or clue as to find them. By that time, the bodies of 5 of the missing were found dead with signs of torment and castration, and it was determined that these killings were connected to the medical guild because the castration seemed to be made by a medical expert. But other than that, nobody knew anything and there was no evidence. So the authorities opened an investigation and began to connect the dots between the killings and those who were missing. The bodies of the boys were identified as homeless ones who had worked in the streets, but most of the missing ones had been reported by their families. This fact unsettled and confused the detectives in charge of the investigation, and they were like, okay, both cases can't be related, because who's so depraved? Well, all their efforts weren't really doing much until one day. One boy came to them and was like, hey, I escaped from my captors, let me tell you everything. The brutality described seemed as if it was ripped from the pages of a horror novel. Some of the atrocities that he suffered that I can say included the castration, obviously, and mutilation, everything else I can't say. He also explained that other victims were impaled to death and their organs were extracted and sold to the black market. Some unofficial versions state that the captors even ate the organs, but there's no official confirmation on that front. Raélian Society was shocked when the victim identified those in charge, since a lot of the folks identified were respected members of society. We're talking 2 doctors, a wealthy businessman, a police officer, and Valentina de Andrade. The leader of the group managed to escape from justice when she presented a very convincing alibi, stating that she wasn't in town when the killings took place. She was exonerated, and now she's happily guiding her increasing flock of followers who simply ignore these crimes. Great. Good leader.